This is StoryBeat, Storytellers on Storytelling, an exploration into how master storytellers and artists develop and build brilliant stories and works of art that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators of all kinds find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Welcome to StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or a review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Well, I am delighted to have as my guest today one of the very best musical theater actors and singers in the world, the fantastic Rebecca Spencer. Rebecca's theatrical career was based in New York City for over 28 years before she moved to Los Angeles. I've personally admired Becky's work for quite some time because she is an original 1997 Broadway cast member of a little show that's near and dear to me called Jekyll Hyde, the musical. And as an early collaborator, she created the role of Lisa Carew, Jekyll's fiancé in the 1990 Alley Theater world premiere, playing opposite Chuck Wagner and Linda Eder. During her 3-year Broadway run in Jekyll and Hyde, she was first contracted as the only female swing, came full circle to perform the role she created, renamed from Lisa to Emma, and took her final bow, assuming principal roles of Lady Beaconsfield and Gwennie, playing opposite Linda Eder, and Robert Cuccioli, Rob Evan, Jack Wagner, Sebastian Bach, and David Hasselhoff. For Hal Prince's International Companies of Phantom of the Opera, she played the role of Carlotta in the Hamburg, Germany company, sung in German, and years later assumed the role of Madame Giry, launching the 25th anniversary world tour of Phantom of the Opera in Asia. Prior to that, she created the role of Madame Giry for the lavish production of Phantom in Las Vegas, under the direction of both Harold Prince and choreographer Gillian Lynn. In her 30-plus years on stage, Rebecca has performed principal roles in over 65 regional theater, opera, national tour, and off-Broadway productions, including Mersina in Kismet, Margot in The Desert Song, Cunegonde in Leonard Bernstein's Candide, and Dolly Levi in Hello, Dolly, among many others. Rebecca was awarded the Backstage Bistro Award for Best Recording for her debut album, Wide Awake and Dreaming. She followed that release with Fair Warning, inspired by the ladies of the Red Hat Society. The recent release of her beautiful new 2017 Christmas recording, Still, 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 marks her third solo recording distributed by LML Music. TV credits include Third Watch, Law & Order SVU, The Rosie O'Donnell Show, and A Linda Eder Christmas for Bravo. Her concert career began when the late, great, award-winning composer Marvin Hamlisch handpicked her to tour as his guest soloist. Rebecca began her much-sought-after song interpretation masterclasses at Southern Methodist University, but has taught masterclasses at Ithaca College and the Governor's School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia. And she's acted as the creative consultant for a Broadway symphonic spectacular at the Moore Theater in Seattle in collaboration between the Broadway-bound Children's Theater and the Seattle Youth Symphony Orchestra. On top of all that, Rebecca is also an adjunct faculty member for the AMDA, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, in their Los Angeles Conservatory. For more, please check out www.rebeccaspencer.com. Well, it gives me enormous pleasure to have as my guest on StoryBeat today the incomparable Rebecca Spencer. Rebecca, welcome.
Well, thanks. Wow, that's a mouthful.
That is. You've had quite a great career, and it's such a good thing to have you on the show.
Oh, I appreciate all of that. It makes you tired.
I get that comment a lot on this show. It seems like your whole life passes before your eyes.
I know. I just was like trying to catch a breath. Oh my gosh, it's great. It's great to talk with you, and of course we reunited when we were at the 20th anniversary celebration of the original Broadway company of Jekyll Hyde.
That's right, just here in May of 2017 in New York. It was terrific.
Yeah, it was something to fly back to, so I was happy to hang out with everybody and just sort of figure out where everybody is in life.
Indeed, and how wonderful that we've gotten 20 years out from the opening on Broadway. That's just amazing.
Lord,
so do you,
seems like only yesterday.
Let's talk about how you do what you do. That's what this show's all about. Do you consider yourself to be a singer first or an actor, or do you think of yourself as complete, everything's one, or how do you think of yourself?
Wow, that's a really good question, particularly living in L.A. Now, because they in New York, when you're at gatherings or networking parties or whatever, a singer is a dime a dozen.
Sure.
A Broadway singer is a dime a dozen.
Not in LA.
Not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in Los Angeles, when I've been introduced to writing circles and folks that do a lot of other kinds of things, including television, which I'm also pursuing, they go, but you're a singer, and I go, yeah, but a singer talks. Well, you do Broadway musicals, yeah, but we have to speak scripts. You know what I mean? So it's like the funniest thing. It's like, why do I have to be pigeonholed, particularly when everyone in Los Angeles wears many hats?
Yes.
So to answer your question, and that's for survival, it's also for curiosity, and it's also because people have there's opportunity out in Los Angeles that is different than when I was pursuing only musical theater and operetta and classical training that I had first in my era in New York after I left college. But and things have evolved, and clearly so is my life. So now I'm out here in LA. But to answer your question, I think I've transitioned through the years based on what I pursued. I always thought I was an actor because when you're in musical theater, you sing and you act. And then, but in the very beginning of my career, right out of college, after getting a formal classical training and with a Bachelor of Music degree from Ithaca College, I came right into New York. And fortunately, at that time, a lot of people were doing Gilbert and Sullivan and operettas in the opera companies around the country. And so not only that, but Paper Mill Playhouse was also doing a slew of operettas. So all of that was still, I could make a living at my operatic side to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fantastic, going from Showboat to Kismet to Naughty Marietta, to Cunegonda, great stories with all of this. And I worked with the great late Alan Jones, who, is known for the Donkey Serenade and the original Ravenel and the black and white movie of Showboat. But anyway, all of those folks, I've gotten to work with a great deal of some terrific people who have influenced my life. But, then Phantom of the Opera came to New York. And then there was this sort of crossover artist thing that was happening. And simultaneously at the same time, some opera singers were then doing their standards albums. Dawn Upshaw I'm a fan of, and Kiri Tikanawa did a beautiful Michel Legrand recording. Dawn Upshaw did this Vernon Duke piece. And then Eileen Farrell did this I Got a Right to Sing the Blues, which I listened to over and over and over again. I was like, okay, this is very interesting in what was transitioning in my world. So at that time, and this was back in the late 80s all the way up to now.
Right.
So now I would consider myself and I guess it would be an actor who sings.
Very good.
Because now, because I've transitioned into many things, I'm doing more comic or character leading lady roles, and or supporting roles in musicals and plays.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that would be But I'm also, in my heart, I'm a singer musician, and the reason why I pursued my first recording, Wide Awake and Dreaming, which went on to win it earned the Backstage Bistro Award, and that was not planned at all, believe me. I didn't have a result-oriented sensibility towards pursuing that recording. I literally called up Philip Fortenberry, my pianist, who's been with me for 20-some years now, and I said, I have this idea because to do a recording, I've been influenced, by some of the people I've recently worked with who are recording artists. And I said, but I want to get back to recitals, the art songs. Art song interpretations are lyric-driven arrangements that, go back to Schumann and Schubert, Schumann and Schubert and Brahms and, Strauss and all of those folks, including Aaron Copland and a slew of, other other art song writers in English and many different languages.
Sure.
And I realized, we always had to work from the lyric first. That was a big focused, traditional way of studying art songs, particularly if you were planning to do a recital.
And thus the acting part of it.
That's the acting part of it. And then you understand, because I was a music major, the composition behind it. And you start to understand the importance of keys for certain composers, and why they pick certain singers back in the day to perform certain pieces, even though you can change keys now today, which I think is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that was unbeknownst to me. I didn't realize that song interpretation, for me, through the recitals that were required at Ithaca College, were becoming a love of mine. And all of the study of composition and theory that I had to get through. And I tell you, I wasn't the best theory student, because I couldn't even read music when I started, when I switched over to major in music at Ithaca College, but I could by the time I finished. But I think that all of that influence, and then I also loved Broadway. I always loved Broadway. I lived in Northeast Philadelphia, and I was always going to go to Broadway. And New York was Broadway, not Philadelphia, even though it's a major tryout town at the time.
Sure.
Still is in some instances.
New York, Broadway's Broadway. It will always be that.
Yeah, that was it. That was where I was going to go, and I did. So and I had great support from my parents and whatnot. So, yeah, I think I'm a singer who acts, but I'm an actress who sings. And I think why I pursued that first recording was I saw the way the industry was changing, and of course, you age, in the industry, and I started to see that I was an ingenue locked in a character woman's body, so and a coloratura at that, and I thought, I better have full use of my full range, because to sustain a career and to continue to keep curious. So I did, and I had some really good things happen in my life, auditioned and worked hard, but I had that basic training. And so because of that, once I just started, the shows started to become more conversational. Stephen Sondheim was coming into the picture in huge ways, and there were all kinds of ways to explore how to use your voice to build a character. And so, that paralleled right to keys, just like the art song composers did. What key is going to be suitable to the character? What is your speaking voice going to be that's suitable to the character, that is also going to be suitable to the song, that segues in from script into song, which is the musical theater form. So my love for music, however, and the way I was able to use my voice, my real voice, my true voice, I didn't want to hide behind when I was doing concerts or recordings. And so I could do that. I could always change my voice up or explore different keys to serve the composer, the lyricist, the script, the librettist and whatnot. But I didn't have a problem with that, because I was in service to someone else's project, someone else's story, and I had to find a genuine truth to portray how I was cast in anything, starring or co-starring, even if I was going to put my own spin on something, but with a revival or whatnot. But my recordings and all three are stylistically the same, and they are, and all the collaboration starts when my pianist and I, my longtime music director and I get together. I've picked a lot of the music. I've listened, and finally I narrow it down. And what I end up putting together first, after falling in love with melodies and whatnot, but it's the lyrics, because there's a million beautiful songs out there, but it's the lyrics.
Well, the great
then I thought,
the great
lyrics,
singers.
Then I figured there's a concept. Each CD has a concept.
Sure.
So it's like I was writing a little mini play, or mini recital for each recording,
right?
Because it all falls under a concept, and all the language, all the lyrics, fit that.
The great singers tend to be great interpreters of words, and that is a form of acting, and that's what you're.
Yeah.
And so when you say you're an actor who sings, I think, well, first of all, let's just state the obvious. You have a magnificent voice, so you're not not just somebody who acts, who sings a little bit like perhaps Rex Harrison did. No, you have a magnificent voice, and so you're an actor first, meaning that you're giving us a performance and an interpretation of the words while singing beautifully.
Yeah, and it's interesting transitioning from opera where you sing fuller, and whatnot. And that's stylistically what they wanted for the big opera scores and whatnot. When I finally told my teacher, I really Bill Schumann has been my longtime voice teacher, and in New York, and he said, get back in the studio here, because I started really to explore a lot more musical theater. He goes, because we have to reshape your voice a little bit so it can be truthful. And so I work with my students the same way. Mm-hmm. But, in the middle of all that, because I trained so fully in classical music and pronunciation of words and whatnot, and sometimes they get a little skewed, because you're trying to get a vowel sound, or if it's written in a range that's just crazy. Sometimes, higher ranges, are really hard to articulate if the text is not set properly, or easily accessible to whatever music has been
course.
Written.
Hard to sing, and hard to hear.
Yes, exactly. And so, what I ended up doing with, when I pursued that first recording, it was really to pick. It was Wide Awake and Dreaming, and it was to pick repertoire that wrapped around daydreams, nightmares, and dreams. Life dreams or just dreams of romance or whatnot. And so all of those songs parlayed to that. And it was interesting. One of the songs on that was the Willow Song, which is a song that I sang in the original key that it was written for Beverly Sills for the opera The Ballad of Baby Doe.
All right.
And I listened to that song and I thought it's too high, to put on this recording because I wanted to have a nice sensibility about it, the listen. And so I didn't care that I wasn't going to sing it in the original coloratura register. We dropped the key. We kept the accompaniment the same. Philip said, you can sing it in the same key, just sing it down an octave. So we did. And lo and behold, to me it becomes like an American folk opera or aria.
Interesting.
And you know what? A lot of the my husband was the director of production at the New York City Opera at the time, and some of the folks at that opera house, I thought I was going to get chastised for it. They loved it.
Huh.
They loved it. But it was also at a time where people were receiving crossover interpretations of repertoire. At the time. So the timing of it was all pretty great. But again, that's where I started to learn really to drive interpretations through the lyric, that original collaboration. And then it's just stayed stylistically how I hear music. We all hear music differently.
Sure.
And we don't all like the same artists either.
Right.
It's what resonates, inside. And I always my 3 albums have a concept to them because that's my theater background. Because of so much material, I have to have a theme. And sometimes they come to me at the craziest moments, and then I write the story.
So why at this time a Christmas album? How did you get to there?
Well, therein lies a very interesting thing. I had done Fair Warning, which was a tribute to the Ladies of the Red Hat Society, and that released in 2006. Mm-hmm. And then after that, my parents, we as happens in life, and it's sad because my parents are my best friends. I lost my mother right in rehearsals of Phantom in Las Vegas. She passed suddenly, and it was hard to be out there in Las Vegas and lose your mother, and you're living out there away from home.
Understandably.
But wonderful cast. But so what happened is then the dad passed years later in 2011. But I wanted to do another album in my head. I didn't have a specific inspiration, but what came to me, and I hope the audiences, can take a breath with this. I had a dream back in February 2016. I woke up from the dream. I had promised my dad I would keep singing long after he passed. And so they were both with the angels right now, flying beyond the rainbow. And I woke up as if I had this conversation with my father. And he always loved when I sang in church. When I'd come home, he'd always ask if I would sing in church. And sometimes it was hard because I was working on the weekends in New York. But I thought, why don't I think about a Christmas album? And then in that dream, he asked me to do one. He said, I think it's time you do it. So I woke up as if I had the conversation with him over the phone, or if he was in the kitchen, with me.
That's interesting.
And so I started to gather some information, some songs that I thought might be interesting, and it just was like, oh my gosh, there's so much good Christmas music. Why do I want to do another one? I can't redo somebody's. And then all of a sudden I started to realize, why not pick repertoire that are those songs in my eclectic list that I listened to for years and compiled for years through the holidays. Pick those songs that make me stand still. Just and I didn't even know some of the lyrics. It was just melodies sometimes. Sometimes it was a lyric. And I thought, let's pick those songs. And it turned out I had picked like 4 hymns. And I thought, oh, Lord, what am I creating here?
Huh.
But I thought, and then I looked at the lyrics and the poetry, because there's so many of them are translations. Some of many of the songs that I've done on this recording, they've been around for centuries, and they come from composers from all over the world. And some lyricists are not even credited. Public domain is one thing, but there are still people that are credited to these songs. And, and when they're translated, it can be interesting, and the poetry. But so I made sure that, the songs were really surrounded the mysteries of Christmas, the sensibility around Christmas, the honoring of the Christmas season, because that's what I know. But it was in no means, did I want to have any lyrics that would influence you to just think to be a Christian. I was brought up to embrace all religions, all mankind, all beliefs, and that comes from my grandmother, my grandfather, who was the Dr. Reverend William C. Compton, and he was an Episcopalian minister who I never met. He died even before I was an inkling. Right, he died right before my parents were married, and during World War II, and. So I never met him, but I got to read up a lot about him and heard my mother's stories about, be open, be curious, be respectful of mankind and of every walk of life and of everyone's beliefs. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a little kaleidoscope, a little fantasia of Christmas, and put it in a cathedral setting. And I'm going to examine these words from hymns I didn't know, and what it turned into was what you call a tone poem. And because Philip and I had always wanted to do a through composed album. We've done through composed long sections in our live concerts, but we thought let's see what we can do with this. And so we it's a tone poem. The layman thing is it's an instrumental composition that it portrays a kind of a particular story, a scene, or a mood. And that is what triggered the fact that the conversation that Philip and I have, he speaks with it through his pianistic qualities and his artistry and his variations and his composition, that an element of improvisation. I have the language. Where I leave off, he finishes a sentence or a thought. He extends a thought. And we've always done that in our collaboration, because that's basically going back to the art song. The accompaniment always had a character. There was a character edge to accompaniment that accompanied the poetry to create a scene or a mood. And so then we decided, because I wanted to put together scenes of certain songs, they were very personal to me, and I write about it in the 8-page little booklet insert. But every song on the page, if you look on the back cover, it looks like it's a bunch of medleys. It is not. They are deliberate scenes that are personalized through my imagination or even personal stories that come from me. And it just so happens I picked a collection of music that just sort of expresses so many adventures that I've had in life and also that are a part of Christmas to me. The seasons of life and the seasons of Christmas. As an actor, I've spent a lot of Christmases away from home.
I'm sure.
So so there's just because you're performing, and so I think about those times, when I was away from home, and some of these songs portray that, and it's very interesting. One of the, sometimes you kind of think, I need to sit still, because I keep saying still. You have to sit still to get information sometimes,
Indeed.
From the universe. And sometimes it's hard to force yourself to do so. Sometimes you just find yourself in that. And I tell you, an interesting thing was I was in Manila performing in Phantom of the Opera, and there was a slew of typhoons that happened, and one was very dangerous. We almost had to. We were called an intermission actually to think that we might have to stop the show.
Wow!
And we brought back to our hotel, which wasn't that far from the water.
That would be nasty.
And it was very scary. And we got through that, and we were safe. But we had the lights turned out, everything was traumatic through the evening. The next night, I came back, and the hotel was so great to us there, and my little sheets were turned over, and there was a little piece of chocolate when I walked in, and it was the last performance of the week. And the radio, there's like a built-in radio was on my bed. I didn't even know how to turn it on. I turned it on. I walked in the room, and this was like September, maybe late August, early September, and A Little Town of Bethlehem was playing. And I thought, what? It's Christmas already? And you start to see, they start to decorate very early in the Philippines, and I found that out after sharing that with my dresser, who's someone that was from Manila, and a wonderful woman. And so I tucked that in the back of my head because it was very comforting. And, of course, then I just wanted to go home, because I didn't want to experience another typhoon. But we put that on there. We put in the bleak midwinter with A Little Town of Bethlehem. And that basically, I think that was the start, unbeknownst to me, of what was coming up regarding Christmas, trying to conjure a Christmas recording. But I guess secretly I always wanted to do one, but you have to say something for me.
Well, there are so many Christmas albums in the world, and so I think that you have to
sing a Linda Eder's. I was a backup with a big choir. It's one of my favorite Christmas albums.
And you have to find some edge, some way in, and I think you've done an absolutely magnificent job with it. And I would urge anybody that likes to hear great, beautiful Christmas music that they should check out Still, 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 which has just been released. Is that correct?
Yeah, it just released September 22nd. We made the early deadlines because Christmas is so specific.
Great,
right?
Exactly.
and I'm excited because there's a premiere song on the recording too. It's a whole fun story and how that all came to be. I had 9 tracks finished by last October and mixed. We recorded in October. By the time December came around, I had 9 tracks, knowing that there were 3 more that needed to be put on that we were playing with. And so we recorded East West Studios on the big console that Michael Jackson recorded in, and the big console that it was recorded, engineered on, was built for Thriller.
That's
so
impressive.
that was exciting.
Yeah.
And there were ghosts of Christmas past and present in East West Studios. And then fast forward, when we completed the recording in 2017 in January, one day, 6 hours left that I could afford, and we got in at Capitol Records. And boy, that was very historical as well. And we recorded like I said, back in before December, I premiered a concert without cello and soprano sax, all but one song. And the one song I did have my cellist play, and she came in to play for the concert at the Wallace Annenberg Center for the Performing Arts, because it was an original song by Keith Thompson, who I've recorded other songs of his. And I was looking for a kind of an anthem, a universal blessing, and he wrote this song back in 2015 called Peace for Christmas Time This Year, and it was beautiful. And so I decided to throw that in the concert, and we read it as if it was a letter to Santa, back then, because we were performing in the sorting room at the Wallace, and the sorting room is part of where the original Beverly Hills Post Office actually sorted their mail, which is all part of that historical construction. So I said, can you imagine how many letters of Santa Claus came through this room that we're performing in? But then when we finished mixing everything, we ended up recording that at Capitol Records, and I put it on the recording. I handed the recording over to Keith Thompson. I said, I would love some instrumentation on 3 songs, and the song you wrote, go to town on. I want to honor that. Well, he then ended up orchestrating only cello and soprano sax, sprinkling that through the entire recording, and all but one song got recorded with all of that. It got, those beautiful, glistening harmonics that he added with his orchestral pieces. Another part of the, emotional mood setting that sounded so beautiful in the cathedral soundscape, and that we created, and it was everything that I wanted, and it really was a poignant thing to say, to express, particularly right now in our climate. We need peace.
Yes, we do.
We just need peace, and it does talk a little bit about the origin of Christmas, but to me, the song is really it really is a universal blessing on the world, globally, the global community.
Well,
I was so glad that came to be, because his lyrics are beautiful, so is his melody.
Well, I think it's terrific that you've done that album, and again, I encourage folks who enjoy really good Christmas music to check it out. So, on to other things in your career and how you do what you do. I'm just wondering, at what point in your life did you know you were a good singer?
Oh, that's so funny. I was just talking to my husband about this. You know what? I don't know. All I know is I was sitting on my front stoop in Levittown, Pennsylvania, on Tweed Road.
At what age?
My grandmother was visiting.
At what age?
That?
At what age?
Oh, gosh. I must have been maybe 6. And I was... about 6, and I was sitting on the front stoop, and I was singing. I don't know, there were friends, we were hanging out, we were singing, and my grandmother heard me, and she said to my mother, she goes, you know what, she can sing. You need to pay attention to this. And my father was always a singer, but he never pursued it. And so through the years, I would hear my dad singing in the shower on the weekends, because he would always be working during the week. And the shower, of course, is the greatest place to sing and vocalize, by the way.
Yes.
But because of the reverb. But he was singing hymns, but he was also singing songs from the golden age of Broadway, because that was his love. And so I started to sing along. I started to hear. I said, "What were you singing?" And he would tell me. And then the musicals came on. The television musicals, the Showboats and the Oklahomas, and the all of those were airing. And every time one aired, even if I was playing flashlight tag outside, my dad said, "You got to come in. It's time to watch The Sound of Music. It's time to." So, and I would watch these, and I thought they were beautiful. I just remember early on saying, "Can they stop singing and just get on with the story?" But unbeknownst to me, I would be a singer. But so then it was, I first grade, I auditioned for Peter Pan. It was an unknown script and with music of Peter Pan, and I got Wendy, and she had a couple of really cute songs, and I think I have it on a reel-to-reel somewhere taped. But and then it just started. Then I got involved with choirs, and then in elementary school, I went to Pearl S. Buck Elementary School, and my first solo was "Bless the Beast and the Children." Of course, that's a Karen Carpenter song, and that introduced me to Karen Carpenter. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's amazing. So, I don't know how old that would make me, like, what, 10 maybe? And so then, through the years, then I listened to Karen Carpenter. I thought that was great. I was singing alto. And then I don't know how I came across Beverly Hills, but my mother used to play Deanna Durbin in the house, and I used to sing along with that. And then Beverly Hills came into my life, and I was like listening to her, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's operettas. And I started to sing. I said, oh, I want to be a soprano. I don't want to sing in Karen Carpenter's keys. So I pushed myself to sing soprano, and we ended up getting a voice teacher by my junior or senior year in high school. And lo and behold, I auditioned for Ithaca College to be in their theater program with the opportunity to take voice lessons with the possibility I might go into broadcast journalism. Well, that all went aside when one of the graduate students was assigned to me to be my teacher, and she said, "You're a real singer. You have to be a music major."
What age were you at this point? What age?
That would be college.
College.
In high school, I did a lot of the leads. I fortunately for me, I did a lot of the leads. And I started, I was doing some outside singing. I think I recorded the national anthem for my high school. Which
so you knew early in your life. It wasn't later in your life. It was actually fairly early in your life from 6 on.
Yeah. I mean, music was introduced to me, and my parents, without pushing me into it, they asked me to take piano lessons. But I played softball. I was a well-rounded kid. I don't have any drama to my upbringing. I was brought up pretty normal. And fortunately for me, my parents were also very, very intuitive. And my mother was an artist as well. My dad loved music. They both loved music. And so there was music always playing in the house, but they steered me. And my choir directors, and theater directors in the Chamonix School District, all of them, they wrote notes, to my parents, and there's something here, and so I was allowed the opportunity, and I did summer stock, and through my junior high school and high school years. But what was so interesting? I never thought about cabaret, even before I went into college, knowing that recitals, I didn't even know what a recital was really.
So you're talking about doing cabaret, not being in the show called cabaret.
Yes, I'm talking about the arena, the art form of cabaret,
yes.
of the cabaret performing stage, across the country, performing arts places and whatnot. And I never thought about it. And I was, because you had given me, I knew this interview was coming up, so I thought, geez, what really spawned me to think about a career like this? And you know what? It really, for me, goes back to, because I know you were in lighting at one point in your career, too.
Yes.
I was taken to the Ice Capades in Philadelphia. And the spectacle with the music and the live performing of the ice skater, dancing to the music and the light changing and the emotions, that to me was like, I don't know what, but it hit me to a core that there was that. I couldn't even label it, but the theatricality of all of that, I still remember being hit as if I was struck by lightning. How can you make the music go with the lighting, go with the language, go with the movement? And little did I know that was all those ingredients were, musicals or the recording industry or dance or ballet, all those things that I love about live performance.
And integrate it all and make it all one, which is a beautiful thing when it all comes together as a piece.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just that. It's funny. It wasn't even the singing, although there might have been some singing happening in the Ice Capades. I don't even remember that, but it was about the expression of music with the live performer. I didn't run to want to become an ice skater. Something wanted me to run to be on stage. And it was because of the Ice Capades.
That's so interesting. Right? The Ice Capades gave you a career, and you're not a skater.
Right, and I'm not a skater. I took skating lessons, but no, by no means. I'm just for pure enjoyment.
So, So when clearly you've done lots of different parts. When you land a role, when you finally get into something, and somebody said you're hired, what's your first thing that you do? Well, how do you prepare? What do you do aside from the obvious of learning your lines? What do you do to prepare?
Oh yeah, no. The first thing I do is I ask for the script. Earlier I had to do it. Now I have my agents do it. But I have to get the script, and I have to have the score. And then I read the script. First thing I do is read the script, and I mark all the pages, all the scenes that I'm in, that my character is involved with. And then I write. I do a little family tree on the characters that are related to, or that I speak about, or that my character evolves with, the evolution of the story, and how that I put all those connections. Then I put my feelings about each one, just immediately what comes to mind. You might erase it later because the director will say, no, really, I think you should go in this direction. But I have my own sort of emotional connection to these characters based on the writing and based on some of my imagination on how I would go about creating it. And then I look at the songs, and I look at the evolution of the songs, the lyric content from maybe an earlier song that's in Act 1, and then to the final song in Act 2, whether it's a song or a duet or whatnot. And I look to see how the arc takes you lyrically and then also musically, because keys change sometimes because the emotion of the character has evolved. And so I work through that. But I would say I have to read the script, and I analyze the character evolution, my role's evolution.
What does that mean?
And then I put it in a book.
Rebecca, explain to the audience what a character's evolution is and how you see that.
Well, a character's evolution is, I always say this to my students too. Even if a song, even if they're just singing a song that's from outside of a musical, but to do the backstory, always look at the backstory of where something original comes from. So the evolution of a character for me is a character starts a show with one set of rules or one perspective, or they have lived up to this point from a backstory you can create, and then at the end of the show, I feel they have changed. They have been altered by the circumstances that have been revealed throughout the story or the play, and I have to be a detective to find out when those little pivots happen to shift the character's sensibility, whether she ages, whether it happens in the course of a week of a character's life, the time frame of which something can happen, but the evolution of the character, I always feel if something is really written well, they should evolve, to something.
Indeed.
To another point of view, they've gotten out of a situation, they made themselves better, or they've fallen out of love, they've fallen back in love. They've experienced all kinds of emotions of forgiveness and celebration and sadness and depression and, introverted. They become an introvert and then maybe they become an extrovert. It's based on confidence building. The way we are in life.
Well, this is something in storytelling, when we talk about storytelling, this is something called a character arc, where a character goes from, at the beginning of a story, usually from some powerful want, and particularly a protagonist, but other characters go through the same character arc, or their own character arc, and they will go from some powerful want. I want something. That's why in the musical theater we hear about I want songs, typically sung by the protagonist. But that then becomes what they need. That's called the character arc. Yep. And so that's why I was curious how you look for that early on in your readings of the work.
And then, yes, always. And then you have all of that, you've got all of that sort of in your head, but you have to be willing when you walk into that rehearsal room to shake it all up, because the person that you're doing the scene work with, or the director, or the choreographer, or the music director, on top of the composer and librettist and whatnot, they have something specific that they need for you as the actor to use your tools to portray. And then the collaboration starts. Mm-hmm. But you always have to be open for collaboration, because, wow, you might even discover something further, deeper.
Sure.
And I love that. But I wouldn't feel comfortable if I didn't do my homework. I wouldn't feel comfortable at all. And it's not like I defy anybody. I'm a great audience, and I'm fun to direct, I think, because I'm malleable. But I do have questions, that come up.
Well, you wouldn't be doing your job if you weren't figuring out what the character was before you started to meet with the director and the other actors.
Yes, exactly, yeah. I always tell a director, I go, no, I'm just going to warn you, you're going to give me a direction. If you see my face go to this world, I said, just know I am not, I am absolutely receiving what you are suggesting, and I just need to I need to drop it in.
Process You've got to process.
Process. So I said, do not by any means. Sometimes my face is is perceived as resistance, and I said, it is never resistance. I said, but I have to process it. so and I do. I don't talk about it. I just go, okay, let's do the scene again now. And then I see if I've hit upon what they want.
Right. Well, that's sure.
Talking about it.
And that is the collaborative process. But clearly, when you make a statement like that, you just said that you have to tell directors one thing. My assumption is, I jump to the conclusion that you've had more than one instance earlier in your career where the director thought you were either not paying attention or thinking about something else or whatever it was, and so you needed to make sure they understood you were with them, not disappeared somewhere.
Oh yeah, and they're always concerned. I mean, it was never like a bad reputation thing. It was just I just wanted to let them know, that I just know that I've been questioned sometimes. What, are you okay? And I'll be, oh, yeah, no, I'm fine, and then they're like, oh, okay.
Well, let's talk about something that you did first, which is Jekyll and Hyde. Let's talk about that for a little bit, because you're someone, it's interesting to talk to people for me who go back, or as deeply involved as you have been on something that I, I sort of created. I didn't sort of create it. I actually created it.
I'm thrilled to meet you finally.
Well, yes. Your involvement goes back to the original Alley Theater production in 1990, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Directed by Gregory Boyd, and it starred Linda Eder and Chuck Wagner. I didn't know Linda at all back then. I didn't know Greg. I didn't know Frank. I remember the audition very well. I went in and I sang some kind of a contemporary song, and then Greg Boyd said to me, "Can you sing Glitter and Be Gay?" Like out of nowhere. And fortunately, I had hired my accompanist to come in that day, and who's now my coach. Phil Hall is my coach forever. And we pulled it out and we sang it, and that apparently got me the gig, even though the range in the 1990 production never utilized that, the coloratura of that. And so, but it was okay, because later on, In His Eyes, which is beautiful, that Christiane Nolan and Linda brought to New York, the Broadway company, I got to sing that, and it was higher. But the process with that was, they were, I remember they were racing to get the script done. They were racing to get some music written out. Some music wasn't written out. Some of the ensemble numbers were being created as we were there. So it was more than just your 3-week rehearsal period. Well, we were down there.
As we sit here 27 years later, believe that or not, but 27 years later, there are people that think they're still racing to finish the script.
Well, I think that's just the process.
That show has gone through so many gyrations; it's just not believable.
There's like 3 versions you can actually rent now. You know what I mean?
There are actually more than 3, but that's a whole other story.
So funny.
So, all right.
I know. Well, I'm sure it's so I really thought I enjoyed Greg Boyd immensely, and he loves the macabre. He loves horror. Scary. That's not right. Mysterious things and horror stuff. He's got a big collection on all of that stuff, and amongst his other stuff, he's a brilliant man. And I thought he really brought that element of not being afraid to explore some of the darker sides to the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the drug addiction and all the other stuff related to how the story evolves, and rather than just the blatant good and evil, type of thing. There was a lot that he put in there. I'm sure it came through you, but how he directed it, I think he really instilled that, and so I really enjoyed that process. What I learned a lot, again, we're going back to the music. I remember getting Once Upon a Dream. Yeah. I never got the music right away. I just got the words. And there was a pocket, sort of a pulse that pop music has. Every kind of music, style of music, has a pocket where it sort of falls into place, in terms of the feel of the music or the feel of the beat or the meter of a song. And if the words are constructed right, the important word will fall into that pocket.
Of course.
And so I had to learn that. I wanted to do Once Upon a Dream a little differently, and not too far off, but from what the demo recording that I was handed, that Linda and Colm Wilkinson had done, the whole demo of the show.
Correct. That was the 1990 demo they did, or not demo, but it was an actual
they
album.
handed that to me when I got a call back. So I was like, oh my God, this is the moment. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. All of that stuff. I thought it was the greatest thing for my career. It couldn't be better. But so I was learning Once Upon a Dream, and it was just on the paper, and they circled the words that they thought would fall in the pocket.
Interesting.
I still have that paper.
Who did that circling, Leslie or Frank?
I think it was Frank and Linda. I was with Frank and Linda. The 3 of us were together, and I then started to get further and further away from my, the classical, squareness, and I was given permission to think a little bit outside the box, but I didn't know what this was, to allow myself to fall into that, and it was so liberating to be around all of that and to be around some of Frank's musical, guidance throughout, just watching other people rehearse as well, and him conduct other musical numbers. It was just, it was really, that show, I can say, being cast in 1990 down in Houston, and that company was extraordinary, the company of actors. A lot of us are still in the business, and we've all gone on to do stuff, and a lot of us have stayed in touch.
Indeed.
But that show, I think I learned about the business. I learned about to be able to create a role. I learned that you have to go home and do your homework, and you come in and to the rehearsals for the next day, and sometimes what you worked on at home gets cut, for whatever reason. And so, trying to make sense out of all of that when you were trying to, do the best job you possibly can. And I just... I loved working with Chuck Wagner on that show. Linda and I, the Lucy roles didn't have any duets at that point, but a lot of us throughout the process were asked, they gave us questions to answer, so the cast could say, if you had this to do, what would you, is there something you would add, or do you think there's something missing from the show? So it was very collaborative. I experienced the same with Ragtime. They did the same thing in Ragtime when I did the final workshop of that too.
Wow.
And but Jekyll and Hyde, they did that. I think it was Greg, just wanting to hear, they can be so, the creative team needs help too, and sometimes it can come from the actors that are trying to fulfill the storyline. And, some of the things came to fruition.
I would say lots of things came to fruition, and that show continues to do so. It continues to go towards fruition, and that's, I think, why the show has had such lasting impact, is that it doesn't feel, the music is relatively timeless. It doesn't feel like it's of a specific period. And the show itself, the themes in the show, the time period in which it's set, it's all relatively timeless. I think that's what allows that show to go on and on, unlike any number of other shows.
It was so fun. There's 7 years is a long time to take for a show to get to Broadway, right? So it started in 1990.
Oh no!
And now it's on Broadway in 1997.
Oh no! I'm going to correct you. I'm sorry. I'm going to correct you. I started writing that show in 1980 with Frank. That show is 37. That show's 37 years old this year.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it started in 1990, and I since have learned about your history and huge contribution to the whole creation of that, which I love. I love to hear all of that, and I know there's angst in all of that, the creative process and ideas and stuff like that. You all want to take ownership for what you do, as I did with my.
If you work on it, you work on it,
Even with my character, and even with Emma or Lisa going into Emma, and some of the lines I remember. Oh, this will be funny. Some of the lines I remember fighting for, not fighting like bickering, but trying to say no, don't cut that line. They said no, we're going to give it to Utterson, the lawyer, which was originally played by Philip Hoffman, and I was like, no, she has to have some substance. Don't take away Lisa, for the sake of the lawyer becoming best friends. We already know you're established as the best friend and the colleague, the coveted colleague. But lo and behold, some of those lines I fought for when I came back to the show in 1997. I say I was at the beginning. We'll talk 1990 for my beginning and the end, which it's not the end, but when it made it to Broadway the first time in 1997, and so I came back to it as a swing. And there I was listening to the script, the first read-through, and I thought, oh, by George, he did get those. He fought for those lines, and that Utterson, the lawyer, still gets to say those lines that I had fought to keep in the script. They took them away from the fiancé, and they gave them to the lawyer. So I thought that was hysterical. But I tell you, it was interesting being the swing. I took the show on in 1997 so that. We had great reviews back in 1990, and then it evolved. They changed out directors. They changed out Jerry Mitchell, who was the original choreographer, Greg Boyd, and Chuck, me, a whole bunch of stuff. And for what all the business reasons and all the creative process reasons, whatever. So I come back I've been busy for 7 years doing a bunch of other stuff. And
Right.
I come back in 1997. I was offered the swing, and I remember, and then I moved up in as my bio said, but I took it because I wanted to learn about directing. And I had no bones about, I'd hung up that dress a long time ago, and mine was black velvet, and Christiane was going to wear yellow. You know what I mean? So it was like mine was a black velvet, tight dress and Victoriana hairstyle, and things evolved, right? So I said, I hung that dress up a long time ago, not knowing that I would end up performing it in 6 months, going on and being assigned the understudy for 6 months. But what was interesting is I was backstage, I was stage left, I remember, and we were in previews. And I've been through all the rehearsals and whatnot, but I was tracking somebody backstage. And I remember I hear Bob Cuccioli sing what was in the right after the Board of Governors said, 7 years ago I started out on this alone, and now alone I'll see it through to its conclusion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, that's my life right there. And that line was in the 1990s, probably before, but that lyric, and there I was sitting, I was like, they just sang my song, my life with the song, with the show.
Well, I will tell you one little story, and then we're going to move toward the conclusion of today's episode, but I'll tell you one interesting little story you'll find interesting.
Yeah, please.
The first time that I saw the show, I'm trying to remember when they introduced it. I think they introduced it during Broadway. Imagine being me, sitting in the audience and hearing for the very first time a song that I had not written. I didn't work on, so it was a pure Wild Horn Brickus song. The song "No One Knows Who I Am."
Oh.
And I was sitting in the audience, and she was singing that basically to me, not, in my mind, and no one knows who I am, because at that point no one did. So that was a revelation at that moment for me.
Not even you.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
That is correct. So I've been having this fabulous conversation with the amazing Rebecca Spencer, one of the truly great lights of musical theater today. And I'm wondering, Rebecca, in your many experiences, perhaps in Jekyll and Hyde or somewhere else, can you relate one oddball or strange or quirky or maybe humorous story that you could share?
Well, first of all, because I've only now started to do comic roles, I've always done the ingenue or the serious roles or whatnot. I've always had a wicked sense of humor, but that question is so loaded because I've had so many. But so
Give us a good
I'll ask you this: do you want to have one that is kind of spooky because Halloween's coming up, or do you just want to have sort of a fun one?
Oh, let's have a fun one. That's either one. You pick them. Let's do the fun.
Well,
one.
The fun one will be shorter, but the spooky one is more interesting. Okay, so I'm in Phantom of the Opera in Hamburg, Germany.
Yeah.
And it's the final performance of the week. My husband flew over to see me finally perform. I've been in the show for 3 months. And we were going to I was able to get a vacation to Paris. So we decided to go to Paris. So he flew over to see me perform, and that night we were going to take the overnight train to Paris. So I was all excited. So the show is sung in German. I ended up singing in German with an Italian accent because the role of Carlotta is Italian.
Sure.
And so the cast was international, mostly made up of a lot of German folks, people from Austria, France, some Brits, some Americans. But it was an international company. And so I had not gone up on any of my lyrics yet. And whether it's in English or another foreign language, a lot of people go up. It's always hysterical when people do go up in a show, particularly if it's a long-running show. So I was a first-class replacement. So this cast had been together for a year with a lot of other principals, and now I came in after the first year. So I'm doing the opening scene when they introduce ghosts. A lot of the Madame Giry has been introduced. The two Monsieur Firmin and André are both going to take over the opera house. And they're introduced to the prima donna Carlotta, who is a handful. She's a diva, and so. I remember them talking about they refer to the ghost, and she goes, "The ghost," she says, this can't happen. So etwas kommt vor, she says, and she goes, and so there's staging to this, and it all was staged to set up her exit stage left in a flurry, as a diva would do. So because Hal Prince and Gillian Lynn they're so specific with their staging, and this was back in 1991 or 92, I can't remember the date, but we were very, very, very strict to the original Broadway staging at that point. And so I was sitting on a dais, and then the first line would come, and I would sit there. And the second line, then I was supposed to stand up. And then the next line afterwards, I would walk 2 steps. And when I would walk down the 2 steps, the ensemble changes positions, makes an interesting picture.
Okay.
And then I finished the speech and I exit left. Well, this particular night, because I was so excited about going to Paris and my husband was there, for whatever reason, I went up. So I sat on the dais, I said the first line. I stood up, I said the second line. And then all of a sudden, I walked down the downstage and skipped the first stop that I was supposed to have, and I heard this flurry behind me. I was like, oh my gosh, I did. I just went up. So I continued to go, and of course that ignited me. I continued to finish my speech, and I said, andiamo, and then we exit, and Piangi follows me off.
Right.
And soon after, the managers follow you off. Well, the one manager played by Monsieur Fermin, who's more of the serious ones, this amazing actor. He was an older gentleman at the time, Wolfgang Witt, I think his name was. Anyway, he's from Austria, and I didn't really have many. I was kind of afraid of him, actually. He was so good in his role, and I never got to speak to him, off stage that often. And so as I exited, I was like, oh my gosh, I just went up. I can't believe it. And people were sort of chuckling, and he comes running off, and I thought I was going to get this huge, dissertation on unprofessionalism or something. And he went, Rebecca, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. He said, no, you did the Reader's Digest version. Das ist besser. And I was like, oh, thank God. But for someone to say the Reader's Digest version, I mean, at that point, it didn't even occur to me. Reader's Digest was translated into many different languages through the years. It didn't even occur to me that someone from Austria or Vienna or wherever he was from would know that. And I thought that was hysterical.
That is hilarious. I love hearing theater stories like that where what do you do when something goes wrong? I mean, that's just, how do you handle it and what do the others on stage do? Did somebody save your bacon or how does it work? That's always an interesting thing to me. So
no one saved me. I just had to talk faster. But it ignited. It was very dramatic.
So do you have, as we're heading right toward the conclusion of today's episode, do you have a great piece of advice or some sort of a tip that you can give to those who are trying to make it in the business, just starting out or trying to make success out of where they've been?
Yeah, it's always a question, you know what I mean? And I've spoken at a couple colleges, and of course some of the folks I've worked with at AMDA, and even outside, or kids, some of the young cast I'm working with out here in Los Angeles. I'm performing within the Musical Theater West and whatnot out here, and I never want to deter anybody from pursuing their dream. Specifically, since no one did it to me. At one point, you got your jaded actors at various points in their life, but that would give you advice based on their, experience. And I've had my trials and tribulations too, but I could never feel that responsible to direct somebody to not follow their dream. And so I say, if you're going to do it, if you're going to pursue the theater, it's not America's Got Talent. Get your training. Because if you're going to do it, then be prepared to commit for the long haul. Mm-hmm. And that means get the best training that you can. And expose yourself to as much theater, as much music, as many plays, as many books as you want to read, whatever you're doing in the creative, and studying an instrument, and go to every concert you possibly can afford. Listen to everything you possibly can that would be, connected to maybe that area that you're pushing towards. And my father gave me some great advice. He said, nothing worthwhile ever comes easy. He gave that to me when I was not doing
That's
well
true.
in musical theory back in college. And he said, nothing worthwhile ever comes easy.
That's so true.
And that's, I'm all for, the fact that music and You Think You Can Dance and all of those shows are out there and whatnot. But, I think it paints a shortcut for a lot of artists. And there's no shortcuts. Because eventually it catches up to you if you don't keep in shape, if you don't train as well as you possibly can. And I always say go back to the classics. If you can, go back to the classics. Study classical voice, study classical dance. Go back to the early writings of things. Always go back to the old style Broadway to see where that came from to now where the new style is. Look at all the go to dance. Take ballet, and that's even if you're not going to really be a dancer, but you need to know how to move. Think of all the tools you need to become for me, it was musical theater. Make sure that you touch upon all of those tools and really invest in that time and go back. I still go back. I still go back to my teachers. I go back to dance. I go back to acting class. I still do it because you've got to keep sharp on so much. And it's also a great reminder, that art changes, and they say art isn't easy, like Stephen Sondheim, right? And so I think that's what I would say is, definitely just know that you, if you have the opportunity, really train well with all of the knowledge you can gather, so that you have that toolkit, that set of skills that can take you from being a coloratura to a mezzo, from being a leading man to a character man, or and also with a woman too.
Well, this is truly wonderful advice that the truth is it applies across the board. It applies to directors, it applies to writers, it applies to technicians, anybody who's in the arts that is trying to make good on what they hope to be a great career. You need to continue to work at it. You can't rest on your laurels ever. And so that's...
I always say, be respectful when you're in a show. Be respectful to everyone.
Yes.
Beyond the creative team. Be respectful to the folks that are that are lighting you, your wardrobe people that are doing your quick changes, the crew. That anybody backstage, any of the
in the theater
weapons.
In the theater, if you're going to be a singer or a performer, you better be really respectful of the person operating the soundboard, because they can make your life much better or much worse. So
no, you just have to know that it's a team. I mean, I played softball, so I played softball and hockey, growing up. So you have to be aware that it is a team effort. You may be the one center stage, but my other point I always say. I go, there is nobody that interesting to look at for 2 hours. You have got to turn your back and give it up, to somebody, something, change the program, whatever. But there's just, it's just more interesting for the audience, and you always respect your audience.
Yes.
I remember there was some, there's no such thing as just, there's no such thing. Every show counts.
Yes.
Every time you show up for a benefit, for one song, for a program, for a duet, for, being a host, whatever, just bring your game.
Well,
always.
Woody Allen once famously said, 99% of success is just showing up. So I think that there's a lot of very valuable advice in what you just said, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show today and giving me a real thrill, and I hope that the listeners get some take away some great advice from what you've said today. Thank you so much for coming on.
What a pleasure. Wow. Thanks so much. I think I talked your ear off.
Well, that's the idea. So, all right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Have a great day.
Thank you, Steve. You too.
Today's StoryBeat tip. Drama means action, no matter how slowly the story unfolds. Movies are all about action. It's best to avoid writing screenplays about people who do nothing more than sit around and talk. That's best reserved for the wonder of stage plays and certain sitcoms. Any action is better than no action. In other words, do your best to avoid static situations on screen. Action can depict emotion. and it is usually at its best when it does. Movies can take the smallest, most intimate moments and make them loom large. Nothing else can do this except perhaps your imagination. Just remember, a sweeping shot of a magnificent sunset may depict emotion, but such images ought to be fully integrated into the story and not merely inserted for the sake of beauty alone. And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to rate us or give us a comment on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great episodes to you. This podcast would not have been possible without the generous support of the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.